Hello, and thank you for watching our interview today. I'm Elizabeth Larison. I'm the Director of Programs at apexart, and I'm here with our latest New York City Fellow, Kasper Hesselbjerg.
Thank you.
So you're on day 29 or so of your fellowship.
Yeah.
About ready to return to Copenhagen. What's your state of mind right now?
I would say I'm kind of in a confused state of mind. It's like so many things have happened and I haven't had time to put all the things in order.
Mm-hmm.
So often I think of something that has happened that I've totally not been thinking about until it comes to mind again. I'm like, wow, I also did that. And, I mean, maybe sitting here I remember maybe 10 things and maybe I've done 70. So.
Mm-hmm. Understood. Yeah, it's a super intense program, and we know we don't give you a ton of free days. We give you about 3.
Yeah.
And I think on your 3rd free day, I gave you suggestions.
Yeah.
This is Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is generally like not dead holiday, but a lot of places are closed, so it's a good day to like relax. But what did you end up doing? I never asked you.
Actually, I ended up. What was I doing? I had a suggestion from Ryan to go to a sake place, so I think that was what I was doing.
Ah, nice. And they were open.
Yeah.
Very good. So now that you've been through the program, how does your understanding of the program now relate to your expectations of the program at the beginning? Are they different, or was it pretty consistent before?
In the beginning, I had the idea that you would plan a program that was kind of related to my work
Mm-hmm.
and what I have been writing about in the application.
Mm-hmm.
So at some point I realized that it was kind of the opposite, that you would be planning a program for me that didn't have anything to do and that might actually be a specific point.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked with one of the other people related to the program, maybe he's a former fellow, and he said that Steve talked about a zone of interests
Mm-hmm.
that you would try to kind of avoid.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Who mentioned that?
That was Casey.
Oh, okay, yes. He meets with, as you know now,
Yeah.
pretty much every single one of our fellows.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's exactly right. We're trying to, because we figure that if you come back to New York, you know what your interests are, and you can do your research and do your thing and use your own connections to do that stuff. But we're trying to do something that you couldn't do for yourself otherwise. And maybe even expand what you're interested in a little bit. Did we succeed in that?
I think
you can be honest.
It makes totally sense. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there is something about that I kind of had to put my mind in that kind of state for doing a lot of things that's not my interest and
Mm-hmm.
still like participate in it like with eager and like do it with
Was that challenging to get yourself in that mindset of like, all right, I'm not really interested in this specifically, but I'm going to commit myself? Or was it?
It wasn't that difficult actually.
Okay.
I think when I was doing these different things I forgot about it, that I maybe wouldn't have done it unless you put it in the itinerary. But it was maybe before going somewhere I would be like, oh, I don't really feel like doing improv or whatever. And then I was like, I would rather do something else, or felt like, oh, there's so tons of things I would like to do in New York, and now I'm doing this. Feels weird.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we try to figure out what things to do and that you wouldn't typically find yourself drawn to, and maybe you can find a good experience with it. It's always we find that having the schedule of activities will draw you out more. A lot of times if people get tired and they're in a new place, it's easy to withdraw and not really know how to get out there. But once you're out there and once the activity is over, you're in a new neighborhood, you find new things that you might stumble across.
Yeah.
Were you nervous before coming here about the fellowship or what we would be throwing you into?
No, not so much about the program or the fellowship. I was nervous about being late for the different activities and not being able to find the places maybe, or and I think like losing the metro card or like practical things. Like,
did anything terrible happen that you felt like?
No, I think the worst thing was yesterday when I got back and I forgot the keys. That was.
But then it's not so bad.
No.
Yeah.
So
sometimes it's good to be faced with those types of things, and you're like, okay, right, if I fall into this worst case scenario, I can climb out of it, no problem.
Yeah.
Totally. Sorry, we already answered this one. So you did a lot of different things. Some were kind of cerebral, some were physical, some had you meeting new people. Can you give an example of one of your favorite activities, or if you have a couple that stand out immediately?
I think actually that would be the improv, because that was the thing maybe I was looking the least forward to. Maybe the one thing that I would have preferred to skip if I could choose one thing not to do. But when I went there, it was like one of the best things. It was really fun.
Tell me more. How so?
It was just totally different than I expected. I thought it would be more theatrical, and it was more about language and text, and not so much about like acting out or and the people there were just such great characters. They were really funny.
So you enjoyed the exercise itself?
Yeah, I enjoyed the exercises and I enjoyed the company a lot. I think it would depend a lot on who would like participate in it and the teacher. I'm not sure I would enjoy improv everywhere with anyone, but the people there they were so nice. And I mean, they were people that I wouldn't have imagined like meeting elsewhere.
Because they were like performers or interested in performing, or
no, they were just like really regular people. Yeah, I don't know. There was just something about them that was really nice.
Do they have improv classes in Copenhagen?
I'm sure
Is
there
an audience or a constituency that would enjoy that? I mean,
I think there would be something similar, but I'm not sure I would go actually. Maybe I would try it, but it's I don't know.
Is something that's come up with past fellows that we've come to notice over time is that some people comment on how comedy and humor is particularly humor as entertainment, is very different in America or in New York. Did you find that here, or are different things considered funny?
No, I think the culture in Copenhagen is so influenced by the American culture, and so I would know American comedy and I would know American movies, so I would know the humor in some way.
Right.
And so I would understand that, but I would also know that there are some things that are funny in Denmark that might not be funny here.
So you might not be trying improv when you go back to Copenhagen. Is there anything that you did or experienced here that you think you'll start to try to look for to try it out again, or maybe even incorporate?
That's a difficult question. I think I would have to go through the itinerary to kind of see if there are specific things, but nothing really comes to my mind of something that I would start doing. Maybe the one thing I've learned that I would like to take back is the approach to doing a lot of stuff, and when I'm doing all these things, like the openness of meeting people that I don't know, because I don't know any people here, so if I wanted to talk with someone, it would need to be the people that I'm randomly meeting, which has been, I mean, the New Yorkers that I've met have been so nice. So
yeah, we get a bad rap sometimes for being kind of coarse or abrupt, but it's a pretty easy layer to break. You find if you ask somebody directions or something, people are really eager to engage. Is that similar in Copenhagen, or?
Yeah, I would say people in Copenhagen they were more open in New York than in Copenhagen.
Oh, really?
Yeah, definitely.
I'm surprised to hear that.
No, I think the Scandinavians are pretty introverted. I mean, you wouldn't talk to strangers. If you're sitting next to someone in a bus, you wouldn't engage in conversation. That's my experience.
Oh, wow.
Maybe if the bus breaks down, you would have something to talk about, and maybe then conversation will start, but otherwise you wouldn't.
Fair enough.
At least that's my experience.
How did people react, or did it come up that you're from Denmark, or did people Do they respond in a particular way?
Yeah, people would they would notice, I guess, because of the language and the dialect or accent. But I think one of the comments would very much be about the political events. So some people would know something about politics in Scandinavia, but most people would be interested in the equality in Scandinavia and present statements like in Scandinavia everybody's equal, and it's only in America there's a lot of difference between the wealthy and the not so wealthy.
And did you find that those observations ring true to your own perception of Scandinavia, or?
It's a little different, but maybe some of it to some extent might be true. I guess it's changing in Scandinavia too.
Fair enough. Can you talk about some of the volunteer activities that you did? Was there anything that, I don't know, made an impact on you, or that you enjoyed, or something that you felt was not as good as it pretended to be in terms of volunteering?
Let me think. Yeah, which volunteer things did I do? I did the volunteer at the food pantry and at the mock interviews.
And the critique of the poems by
oh yeah, that was nice.
Inmates.
Yeah.
And the building the boats is technically a volunteer thing, even though I know you also went out on the water.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we didn't build any boats.
Oh, you didn't that day? Okay.
No, they were only building boats in the winter.
Oh, okay.
So while the weather was nice, they just go sailing.
Bad.
Yeah. So, but that was really nice, and I think I did something else. There was something. Well, the food pantry in the beginning was a bit rough because of my backache, and I couldn't really participate properly, and some of the other volunteers were a bit upset about that. And but like when it came down to meeting the people we were handing out the food to, it was really, really pleasant. It was such nice meetings. The mock interviews was funny because I had expected it to be more like proper simulation of a job interview, but when it came down to it, it was rather a conversation on what the people wanted to do, and it was really funny, and they were so nice. So I really enjoyed that a lot. I'm not sure that I helped that much, if it made such a big difference, but I mean,
sometimes it helps to help somebody visualize what they are capable of and help them brainstorm how they might approach.
In the long run, it might make a difference. If maybe I would meet some other people where I could be of a greater help, or and so it might be good. But I think the 2 interviews I did, I had a great time, and they were really friendly, and I think maybe they had fun too.
You enjoyed it too?
Yeah.
I remember the other thing that you did now. I think you also taught English, or had an English, or practiced somebody who was learning their English, right?
That was the most difficult thing.
Oh, tell me more.
But that happened. I think that was because the people I met with, they weren't so eager to learn English.
Oh, but they came anyway.
I expected that the people being there had kind of decided themselves to be there, and I'm not quite sure if they had. It seemed like they hadn't.
Okay.
So I was kind of trying to make conversation, and it was like I had to make such an effort to make them talk, and there was. So I felt like I was kind of pushing them to do something that I wanted them to do rather than something they wanted to do, and it just felt like an uncomfortable situation.
No kidding. Usually we have different responses from that, so it might have been a different set of people coming that day, or something.
It could. If I had talked to 2 other people, they might have been really eager to talk, right? So that's just.
And do you volunteer much at back in Copenhagen, or is this sort of a newer thing?
Not at all.
But despite some of the difficulties you had, like at the beginning of the food pantry one with your backache and stuff like that, is it something that did you feel something beneficial from it, or is it not something you would try to incorporate into life in Copenhagen?
I don't think I would do it. I see the reasons why I should, or why it would be a good idea, and maybe I would like consider it more after doing it here. But still, I think I would need to take care of my time in Copenhagen, and I would feel so busy. So I would have to do some restructuring of work and private life, and then if I managed to do that, maybe I would have time to do something like that, because I did enjoy it, and I think if I would meeting with those people regularly, it could be really nice to do.
Yeah, there's something about volunteering. It kind of gets you out of your social networks, you know.
Yeah.
Not the computer kind, but the real life kind.
Yeah.
In an interesting way. And I guess speaking of volunteer activities, a lot of ours in New York are structured towards like a civic mindedness or contributions that are oftentimes not supplied by our local economies enough, right? So like the ways that volunteer work or civic work fills a gap governmentally or socially.
Yeah.
I was wondering how you saw our sort of state of economy here, if you thought much about our politics, or like what's going on in New York specifically, or even what's going on in the States more broadly.
Well, then the thing about filling up those gaps that the government or the state wouldn't fill is definitely one thing, because seems like there would be more need for it in New York than in Copenhagen. I'm not saying there wouldn't be a lot of good things to do volunteeringly in Copenhagen, but it's I don't know how to say that, but it's the government is, or the state is, like doing a lot more of those jobs or things in Copenhagen.
That's something else that I was wondering, since you already mentioned, the perception of Scandinavia being so social democratic, supportive, right? There's perhaps a little bit less work to be done. Yeah, exactly. And also the whole thing about funding and giving donations in museums and like all the venues I went to seem much more dependent on donations. That's a rare thing. That's a rare thing in Copenhagen, asking for donations. Either there would be a price, like a ticket price, or it's free. So there would be one or the other. Interesting. Yeah, the sliding scale model here is coming out more and more, it seems. So you went to, you will have gone to 4 therapy sessions during your fellowship here. Have you found, we don't have to go into detail obviously, but have you found them interesting, or what is useful, since you've been alone a lot in this fellowship? What have you taken from the sessions?
I think it was nice that it was one of those things that reoccurred in the itinerary, so that I knew something was happening, like just more than once. Right. So there was actually a person I was having a conversation with for a whole hour, and I would meet her again. Right. There would be something that's different than all the other things I was doing, and I think that was really nice. But I never tried like with therapy before, so I was really curious what it would be like. But to me, it was very much just like a conversation with a good friend.
Not like your expectations were.
I don't know. Maybe I was at some point during this stay here, I thought that maybe I should prepare something, like in order to like stay on the same topic and like get somewhere in this kind of conversation, so it didn't just end up being a conversation about me for an hour.
Right. There's a weird thing where, like, if you have a conversation with somebody, there should be some sort of like, and how are you today? Where did you, Yeah,
or just like the conversation should be about something. We should like discuss something or get somewhere with what we're talking about. And if I'm just like talking about how everything is going, I mean, maybe there's chat in something more, but I don't know.
Would you have preferred if there were more activities that happened on a recurring basis? Like if you had a certain type of workshop, or if you meditated every Thursday morning or something like this, did you sort of crave more of a regularity or a recurrence of a certain type of activity to get?
But then it should be. I do, and I think that's what I'm looking forward to, getting back to some kind of routine. Because I think that's one of the things I enjoy in my everyday is the routine things. But the routines are based on my own choices. So there would be something that's what I want to do. That's what I want to be a part of my everyday. And if there were reoccurring activities, it would only be nice if it was something that I wanted to do. I mean, doing the whole itinerary was good, and it felt good doing all those strange things, and maybe even the things I didn't feel like doing was all right doing, because I knew I'm just gonna do it once. I'm just gonna be here for 2 hours or half a day or whatever, and then I can manage that. So it would make it different in some way. So it's
Absolutely.
But I mean, meditating every Thursday sounds nice.
I think so too. You mentioned before about when you were kind of nervous about getting places on time, navigating the city, getting lost, or losing something critical like your Metro card. How did you deal with achieving comfort in the city, or was there a certain point in your fellowship here that you kind of felt like, all right, I understand now, or I'm comfortable? Was there a specific turning point?
Yeah, when I read the itinerary, I could figure out that it was gonna be a busy week, but I wouldn't be like crazy busy. It's, I mean, there would be like 1 hour between 2 events, and maybe it would only be a half an hour ride in the subway. So that would mean I would have like 15 minutes at each place to kind of get lost from away, which was sufficient. And so no, that was fine. And also like using the smartphone, and the whole transportation system in New York was just super easy.
Are you converted to smartphones now? This was your first?
No.
No, okay.
I'm not. Well,
I thought we were succeeding in that for a moment.
Yeah. Well, when I'm in Denmark, I'm not gonna use one. I'm pretty sure. But okay, let's see. I still have it. So.
Well, if you're moving to China in the next year.
Then I'm gonna have one for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, because just finding my way around, just as a map, it was so clever. So much. I mean, usually I would write a little note with directions and have the paper in my pocket. And I mean, if I kind of get outside of my little drawn map, it's sometimes difficult, and then I would be late.
Oh yeah.
And I think I'm not gonna be able to draw a complete map of Beijing. So.
No?
Yeah. So I think the smartphone is a good choice.
Yeah. Once I got one, I can't imagine. I used to draw the maps myself, and I was a late adapter, but now I don't think I could go back. So, as many people know, if they're familiar with our fellowship program, you're required to keep an online journal here, and you were very prolific in making sure you were writing every day, and you wrote really thoughtful responses to your day-to-day. I wanted to know if that's something that you did regularly before the program when you were at home. Are you
writing a journal?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. How would you describe the experience for you? Was it difficult to kind of recount what your thoughts were every day, or did you find that it was useful for you in kind of processing? Or?
Yeah, definitely useful. And it's like that was the second thing reoccurring.
Right, that's true.
Like writing the journal, and it would give me it would sometimes be hard to find enough time to do the writing, but when I did have time, it would be time I would spend like going through the day, and that felt really nice. And maybe I'm not doing a journal when I'm home, but I would be writing about things that I experience, like writing down my reflections. It would be different, but I'm used to like writing what I'm thinking about in a sense.
Maybe not so much in a sort of recap kind of way, but streaming.
Yeah.
Did you happen to read any other journal? I mean, there's nobody in an outbound fellowship this moment, but did you happen to go back and read other people's entries at all?
Before I got here, I read a few posts, but didn't really catch my interest. And at the same time, I didn't feel like knowing too much about it. I thought one of the great things about going here was that I didn't really know anything. That I couldn't know it all. So that would just like giving up the idea of preparing anything and then just going here and see what it would be like.
Right.
That was what I decided. But I have been thinking that when you have a new fellow in January, I could be curious to follow that journey.
Now that you've experienced
Yeah.
it, you're not afraid of losing the surprise or
No.
mystique of
Exactly.
what we can offer.
It was also because you have mentioned at some point that some of the activities would be like reoccurring during every fellowship. So I figured if I read a lot of them, I would also know some of the things, or be like, whoa, they have been doing that already, and then I would kind of have their experience of what they had done in my mind when I was doing the same thing, and would rather be without that.
Yeah, I think I would be of that mindset as well, but there's a lot of people that we've brought through in the program who defend it, even though if they've read about something beforehand, the way that an individual can experience it and then translate it into a journal, and then the degrees of translation actually change what that experience could actually be from what the direct experience would be for the person. And I think that there's, if something that you might be really familiar with might be completely new and unheard of for somebody else. Which is pretty, the more fellows I see, the more that people digest experiences differently. Although you mentioned the improv class, people almost always have something to say about that because it so much pulls them out of their zone of comfort. I wanted to ask you also about some of the foods that you tried here. You had a pretty ambitious itinerary of trying different foods and also sharing about it a little bit in the journal. Were there any types of cuisines that you found here that were first for you, or something that you particularly reveled in?
Not as much as I had expected, actually. I think because before going here, people in Copenhagen would tell me, oh, you're going to New York, you can have every kind of cuisine, and they just, no matter what cuisine you choose, you can find a really good place for that kind of food. So I had been really curious about it and been looking for it, but I don't think I have had time going into like finding those places, and often because the schedule was so busy, it would be like I would need to get something to eat in those 2 exact hours between the 2 different appointments, and I would kind of need to find it in this area.
Yeah.
I mean, so I wouldn't have time to like food tourism kind of thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of different variety, obviously, in Manhattan, which is largely where it's a hub, between place to place. But a lot of the real ultra authentic cuisines sometimes are found at the end of the subway line in in Queens or in Brooklyn or even up in the Bronx.
Yeah.
But okay, so it wasn't so different than like the offering. I mean, at first glance, from what you would get in Copenhagen, did you feel like there were pretty much parity between the two?
The variety is bigger or greater here, definitely. And yeah, I did get some really nice food, definitely. But I wouldn't have time to like go to a proper restaurant that often, and so most of the time I would get something that's kind of cheap and easy, and then it would be kind of the same thing.
Right. Did you cook much while you were in the program?
No.
At all?
Yeah, once.
Okay. Understood.
And breakfast, but that's not really cooking. But no, I really didn't find that I had the time. And I think the supermarkets were quite expensive compared to eating out. I mean, the supermarkets were at least as expensive as in Copenhagen, if there weren't even more. And eating out is much cheaper than in Copenhagen. So.
When you had free time at the end of the days or on free days, what did you find yourself gravitating to? How did you want to spend your free moments?
Sometimes I was looking for places to eat or cheap places. if I had time for that. And I did try to find good bookstores, but didn't spend that much time doing it. And that was also maybe because I think I should put restrictions on my book buying.
Did you go to the Strand by chance?
Not yet, but
very close to you.
I wanted to do that today actually.
Yes, I recommend it. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Good.
But then I would be writing the journal and reading a bit, having a cup of tea in the apartment.
Relaxing.
Yeah.
How did the cultural diversity compare in New York to Copenhagen?
That's a really nice experience. That was maybe one of the best things, that the cultural diversity is it's so much greater than in Copenhagen. And I mean, I think that was also one of the reasons why it's been so easy to be here, because I didn't feel that much of a tourist, because people just look so different, and they're like also the kind of clothes people wear, and like there's so much, the diversity is so great. That was really nice, I think.
What was your interaction with, or experience with, or understanding of, if you did have any, of the art world in New York while you were here? Did you get a sense of it at all? Did you go to museums at all, art museums on your days off?
I went to MoMA, but MoMA and the cloisters. I'm not sure if that's a
yeah, I mean, not contemporary art
no.
for sure. That's
no, it's not. But I guess it's art. But but that's funny. I think I've been here a month, but I don't have any impressions, and I've hardly spent any time looking at art. I did at some point think I should check out the gallery scene while I'm here in my spare time, but I didn't really feel like it. I'm not that interested in contemporary art, actually.
Is that something you would have done on different terms here? Would you go look at the galleries, or is that so far from your interests?
No, if I had plenty of time. Maybe if I've had more days off, I wouldn't spend that much time doing it, but I would go to a few. I would run through the list and pick whatever I felt the most interesting. So yeah, I think I would like to do that if I get back.
And was it difficult for you in terms of, I know we diverted your schedule away from the art world and the art scene. We also, as everybody knows, we tell you not to work on your projects. Was that difficult to follow?
I haven't been working on any projects, but it was difficult not to spend some time like organizing, replying emails, all that kind of practical
maintenance.
Yeah, exactly. So actually I think that's one of the things that I have been doing in my spare time when I got back. There would be things that I kind of needed to answer. Yeah.
But they'll be there also when you get back.
Yeah,
I'm
definitely.
sure they're all piled up.
Yeah, definitely.
In your time here, did you encounter certain behaviors or ideologies, or even, I don't know, other cultural things that seem specifically American to you?
I think no, not really.
You don't have to filter for us.
Not really American, because it felt like there were so many different cultures here, so many different ways of doing things. So at some point I think I was looking for instance, a real American diner or whatever, and it was like, it wasn't really here. I mean, I could maybe have found it, but I kind of gave up and figured that the New York kind of thing to do was just the variety of choices was so big.
Okay, so there is no Americanness. We don't live up to our stereotypes.
I think maybe in Washington, I felt more like that city had a uniform, made a uniform impression on me. But I think New York made too many different impressions.
Okay.
So I would have an impression of New York, but it's not something that I kind of encountered as American or experienced as American necessarily.
Well, you brought up DC, which is my next thing I wanted to ask you about. Can you talk more about your, understanding of DC vis-a-vis New York, or if that lived up to your expectations?
That was
like
really nice.
The capital.
It really felt like when I've been here living in an apartment, doing the itinerary. I was just doing the program, but then taking the trip, it really felt like I was traveling in a way.
Interesting.
Going there was really, really nice. And I liked the city, and meeting Casey was really great, and the library was great. It was such a nice trip, and it was funny to see something different than New York. So when I got back, it was like I was kind of re-experiencing coming to New York, and I was like, wow, the buildings are really tall.
Yes, you have something to compare it against.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like getting pulled out of getting used to it, and then put back in was a nice experience.
Did you have a sense of our political climate right now, and juxtaposing New York versus DC? Did like the recent election seem more prominent in day-to-day life in New York versus DC, where it's the site of most of our national politics?
Yeah, DC would have more anti-Trump graffiti, for instance.
Oh, really?
I haven't really seen that in New York.
Interesting.
But yeah, it was really curious to be here during the election. So it's been super interesting hearing people's opinions. But I think I've only met pro-Hillary or anti-Trump people.
Well, we are the majority.
Yeah.
Counting the difference being raised every day. I think it's now over 2 million people across the nation, apparently.
Okay.
Yeah, the popular vote is not in his favor. But that's also reflective pretty strongly. DC voted overall for more towards Hillary, and same with New York.
Yeah.
As a region, it's really interesting to look at the electoral map, or not the electoral maps, but like the district maps to see like which New York districts represent. Yeah, it's almost all blue, but there's like one little square, like right near Times Square, where maybe 2 people live, and you can see how many people voted for Trump versus Hillary. It's really interesting.
And DC was like 94% Hillary or something like that.
Yeah. I was hoping to send you to some sort of political event in DC, but since it was the Thanksgiving weekend, things were a little bit quiet on that front. Though you did attend a protest here against the North Dakota Access Pipeline. What was your experience with that? I know you wrote a little bit about it in the journal, but...
It was like, didn't feel that I was really participating that much. It was nice meeting with your friend. She gave me a few insights on the whole situation, but maybe I would have liked to meet with someone that knew even more about it, because I didn't really know what was going on. And yeah, so it's kind of a random demonstration. I was just following in the back.
Do you do much, or have you protested much back in Denmark, or are protests not really a common thing?
It is kind of a common thing. Yeah, I've been doing some protesting in relation to budget cuts on the cultural side, and yeah, but it's not a big part of my life, that kind of activities.
Do they follow pretty much the same format or same level of organization / disorganization?
It seems like to be the same thing. And that was what I was thinking about when I was doing it, if this was the most efficient way to spend your time, if you wanted to make a change. I mean, I wasn't sure about that.
Yeah, it's an important question, I think, that people struggle with, myself included. Phone calls versus bodies in the street, what's causing a bigger disruption? Or
it was just so many people spending so many hours, and I mean, if they wanted to do something, maybe they could organize in a better way to be more efficient. I don't know, but maybe that would require another kind of effort from everybody, and maybe people aren't willing to do that. Maybe I was there just walking the street, having a conversation, so that was pretty much similar to not being in a demonstration for me. I mean, I could have done that without the demonstration, done the same walk with a friend, and so you don't need to be that engaged in the whole thing to be there.
I wanted to ask you, I know that we curtailed some of your physical activities a little bit. Before we did that, you tango danced, and I'm trying to think of the other thing. You rode the bike a little bit. Can you talk a little bit about those experiences, if you enjoyed them? Or?
Yeah, I really did enjoy it, and I'm sad that I couldn't participate in in the things we had scheduled, because they made a really nice change from all the other experiences. So I think there would have been some nice breaks or some nice different things to do.
Sometimes though you can go for a walk in a certain park or something and you can still get that experience.
Yeah,
like the High Line, for example, is one
really
that
nice.
I always enjoy.
Yeah, that was really nice.
Well, I've gone through the majority of my questions. Do you have any questions for me about the program, or?
No, not really. I think I got the point of the program pretty well, and I mean there were, I guess I have some questions, but not like direct questions that I could ask you.
Is there any question I should be asking you that I haven't asked you already?
I think questions would come up for me like in a while, because right now I still feel in the middle of it. That, as I mentioned in the beginning, I totally don't feel I have an overview of what I have been doing and the effects of the program, and I understand the program also because I've been in conversation with you about the program, and I've also experienced the program, but putting those two together, if they really match or how they add up, I haven't had time to do that, or I'm still like in the middle of making those like related.
So you're still in the process of determining how it will affect you afterwards.
Yeah, I feel so.
But you're also going to be moving probably to China within the next year.
Yeah.
A new environment, trying new things.
Yeah.
Is there a chance that you might be looking for things outside of your comfort zone intentionally?
Yeah, I think actually. Yeah, I think I've learned some things from doing this program, that I can actually handle a lot of different activities that I haven't tried before. It's not that difficult. So maybe.
Okay. Works for me. Kasper, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, me too.
All right. And that's it for today.